Chapter 1. Four strangers checked in at the Simon Hotel in Banjul one evening. None of them knew of the other three, or about being one of the four. And this would remain the case because unknowingly the hotel assigned them to different rooms on different floors in different wings. First to check in was a man aged about 60 years. His hairline had dated all the way back to his crown. But there it held. No more hair loss. He had a strange habit of smacking his lips as he talked, appearing to shape each word first and to add voice to it only after. Arrival formalities required him to complete and sign a registration card at the hotel's front desk. He signed it as Karanja Kimani, professor in the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Nairobi, Kenya. The hotel gave him a room on the fourth floor on its east wing. Next to sign in was another man, aged about 70. He had a bushy mustache, which, in moments of speech, wriggled over his mouth like a moth fighting to free its wings then fly away. The man registered as Ngobile Mwelusi, comrade and citizen of Zimbabwe. In the blank, his card had his occupation. He defiantly wrote, "Not applicable." The hotel allocated him a room on the fifth floor on the south wing. A young man, aged about 50, checked in, big and flabby. He looked like a failed sumo wrestler. However, this feature was not evident now. He had buried it under the loose robes, topped with one of those cone-like capes that always flop to the left and right by design, not flow. There was something about his eyes. They narrowed into slits when he relaxed, narrowed further when he smiled, and vanished altogether when he laughed. He registered as Chineke Chiamaka, pastor at the Church Inside Africa, CIA, in Lagos, Nigeria. He took a room on the sixth floor on the west wing. Last to check in was yet another man, 40 plus years old. His walk seemed to be motion-powered by rebellion. Was it a gesture of protest against someone or something? He checked in as Saif Tahir, engineer, former employee of the Ministry of Defense in Tripoli, Libya. He got a room on the third floor of the north wing. Professor Kimani had been in his room for less than an hour when the phone there rang. He looked at his watch. Not 7 o'clock yet. He looked out of a window. Pitch dark already. How fast falls the African night. Like a heavy rain of ink, he thought. He picked up the phone. "Is that Professor Kimani?" A male voice on the line asked. Professor Kimani did not respond. "Hey, I heard you pick up," said the voice, already irritated. "So I know you are there. Look, I have an urgent message for you from AGDA. It's pronounced Agda, as word Agda. Hello? Are you still there, Professor Kimani?" This time Professor Kimani responded. "Agda, the Agency of Governance and Development in Africa, has sent him here to Banjul." "Yes, I am here," he said. "Good. Agda's message for you is that you accept me as your guide while you're here. Now, before you go worrying about that arrangement, let me assure you that I'll do everything I can to make your mission here a success. You have my word." "Nigerian?" Professor Kimani guessed from the way that man pronounced every stressed syllable. "Educated Nigerian." He added his qualification after taking into account the man's impeccable grammar. "Who are you?" he asked. "Later," snapped the Nigerian. "Right now, I want to know if you have received a briefcase. I left at your hotel for you. I want to know if you have received a briefcase I left at your hotel for you. Professor Kimani looked at a briefcase his hotel had just delivered to his room. Yes, I have received it, he said. Just now, in fact, he added. I can't open it though. Did you scramble its lock perhaps? It's 1, 1, 2, 4. I'm sorry, what was that? That was its combination lock. Set the lock on that. The briefcase should open. Now, before you do anything foolish, first make sure that it contains all the items that it ought to have. They are listed on a sheet that you'll find inside. Oh, Professor Kimani, that was an order. The voice paused, expecting protest from Professor Kimani. When none came, it gave the rest of the demand. Obey, Professor Kimani, obey. Still, Professor Kimani did not protest. Excellent, applauded the Nigerian, clearly pleased with his quick victory. So, Professor Kimani, how much time will you need to acquaint yourself with the materials in your briefcase? 1 hour? He did not wait for an answer. 1 hour it is. Then, good night. Wait, Professor Kimani said. Haven't you forgotten something? Me forget? Retorted the Nigerian. Cocky, educated Nigerian, Professor Kimani said to himself, now adding up all his assessments about the man. I asked for your name. Who are you? Oh, that. Let's just say I'm your guide, the man said. I meant your real name, Professor Kimani insisted. Instead of an answer, he heard the line die suddenly from the other end. Comrade Melusi got a similar call after. Comrade Melusi got a similar call after. Pastor Chiamaka later. Engineer Tahir the last. All three said they had failed to open their briefcase. To all three, the caller gave the keys. 1, 1, 2, 4. Dr. Afolabi had someone call him from behind. He stopped talking, then turned to look. There she was. She was wearing a scarlet blouse, a black skirt, and red high heels. Who was she? She was not anyone he could remember. Perhaps she had called someone else. He looked around. No one else had stopped. That made sense. She had called his name. She called again. Dr. Afolabi, may I please have a word with you? She asked. With me? He asked. Are you sure? I'm sure, all right. Which means you will now follow me. This way, please. She led him to a corner with 2 chairs. So sit here. She indicated one of the 2 chairs. 1 minute is all I'll take. Well, maybe I'll take more, but 5 at most. She sat on the other chair. 1 minute, 5 minutes? Where's the difference? He joked. Then he sat as well. My name is Mackenzie, she began. Fiona Mackenzie. First, let me thank you for agreeing to sit for this interview. Wait, can I tell you something else before I continue? You see, whenever I say my name is Mackenzie, people look at me quizzically, silently demanding an explanation. And the explanation, Miss Mackenzie, is what? He asked. I was adopted by Ian and Elspeth Mackenzie, Scottish missionaries. They are now back in Edinburgh now, but were in Banjul then. They took me in while I was less than a year old. Cute as a button and sharp as a needle, he thought. Her eyes were wide and white like a pair of moons. She continued, "My natural parents were Gambian, but I will never see them. They are dead." "Oh well." She writhed in her chair. "Goodness me, what am I doing? Dictating my autobiography?" She waved that idea away. "Let's talk business now, shall we?" She pulled out of her handbag a small device, then switched it on. "Mind if I start recording?" "You're a reporter." He had not thought she was. "Yes, from the Gambian news." "I see. Now, how can I help you, Miss Mackenzie?" "I'd like to ask you a few questions, if I may." "Yes, you may. In fact, why don't I start you off?" "My name is Abiola Afolabi, which you seem to know already, but you can just call me Abiola, my first name. Take it from there." "I will." "You study at Harvard University in the USA. Now you teach at the University of Abidan in Nigeria." She smiled. "I got that from the cover of your book, Failure of States." He averted his eyes to enjoy his fame in the correct manner. With humility, he hoped she would easily see through. This black Scotswoman surely knew her trade, he thought. "When I heard you were here at the Simon Hotel, Dr. Afolabi, I decided to come and see you. So here I am." "This is all funny." "Funny?" "Yes, I expect to see an academic scarecrow dressed in jeans. Instead, I see a well-dressed man who might well be a business person." "I'm sorry I've disappointed you, Miss Mackenzie." 40. "What? Your age 40? No, 45. To my 35, imagine that. Go have your picture taken right now, Dr. Apolabi. You won't always look this good. I'm not joking. Go." "Miss Mackenzie, was there something else you wanted us to talk about?" She slapped herself on one cheek as if to punish herself. "I was beginning to ramble on, wasn't I? Enough. Now then, Africa Head of State will soon start a debate at the Pinnacle Hotel, 2 streets from here. I'll be covering the debate for the Gambian News. I understand you'll be an advisor of the head of state during the debate. Would you give me some background? What will be the heart of the debate?" They will be debating a document titled Way Omega. You see, not long ago, 20 Nobel laureates discovered a way to develop Africa and then published that discovery in a document with that title. Africa's ministers for planning had a look at it. They liked it. Now Africa heads of state are in Banjul to adopt it as a common development strategy for all of Africa. That's the background, Miss Mackenzie. Or did you want actual content? She shook her head. What are your expectations of the summit, Dr. Afolabi? What are my expectations? Please don't get me started. I expect the summit to be a historic moment. If adopted, Way Omega will change African politics dramatically. Just think, no more military coups, no more rigged elections, well, no more foul play. Period. Dr. Afolabi, not all the heads of state assembled here are fair players. In fact, a few are out and out foul players. They rose to power through military coups or rigged elections. Those won't be walking along Way Omega anytime soon, will they? Change is always like that, Miss Mackenzie. One side has defenders of existing arrangements. This sure about the loss if those arrangements end, fight tooth and nail to keep them. The other side has challengers of existing arrangements. This not yet sure about their gain if new arrangements replace old arrangements. Do not fight so hard to win them. Huh? What did you just say, Dr. Afolabi? You're not listening to me anymore, are you, Miss Mackenzie? Anyway, I was saying, Omega will put Africa on a new course, free from the obstacles that have defeated its past efforts. Imagine this, Miss Mackenzie. Africa without coups, without civil wars, without... He stopped himself. Look who's rambling on now, Miss Mackenzie. Yet you can't blame me. I told you not to get me started, remember? Yes, I remember. And yet, you have your book, Failure of States. Dr. Apolabi, may I ask you something? What makes you this optimistic about Africa's future now, when in that book you are very pessimistic? Is it the content of Omega or the prestige of its authors? He began to dislike her. Miss Mackenzie, did you say my book was pessimistic? Miss Mackenzie, did you say my book was pessimistic? Yes, I did. Was pessimistic really the word you meant? You see, the word means... Let me try again, Dr. Apolabi. What makes you optimistic now, when before you were pessimistic? Miss Mackenzie, I heard you the first time. Then answer my question. I see I had totally misjudged you, Miss Mackenzie. He had seen a lamb, vulnerable. Now he saw a lioness, dangerous. I thought you were a proper, good-mannered journalist. Instead, I just see you're one of those fire eaters who confuse journalism with bad manners. Dr. Apolabi, you haven't answered my... What joy do you get out of being rude to those you interview? You like watching them explode from anger and bleed? Is that it? Fine, but we've just met. What did I do that offended you? Let me put my question another way, Dr. Afolabi. Why did you come to this summit? Correction, I didn't come. I was invited. That means presidents wanted me here. Repeat, presidents. They saw merit in the book you dismissed as pessimistic and wanted me to assure them that Omega agrees with it. So who cares what you think? What do you know about books anyway? Let me tell you something else, Miss Mackenzie. He changed his mind. A voice inside him was saying he had become too defensive. On further thought, I don't think I have to defend my book before anyone. Least of all before a third-rate reporter of the Zambian news. Gambian news, she said. Whatever. All right. Dr. Apolabi, now can you think through your book and give me an example? A specific example on which Omega agrees with your book? Yes, I can. Her mobile phone rang. She answered it. As she did, she was already gathering her things, preparing to leave. Dr. Apolabi, I have to go, she said. Silly boss wants me back in the office. Something has come up. Sorry, Dr. Afolabi, in only a word now, because I have no time left. What is a specific example you are about to give? Let me see if I understand you correctly, Miss Mackenzie, he said, suppressing hot anger. A man you claim is your boss calls you. Therefore, I must compress my example into a word? You know bosses, they don't like to be kept waiting. She picked up her things. Listen, I must go. She rose and started leaving. Then she stopped. I could come back later. Would that be okay? Absolutely not. He almost shouted. Then what do you suggest? She asked. I suggest that you go read my book, not just its cover. He stood up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I too must be off. Have a good day. For 9 foreign heads of state were in Banjul for the summit. All looked happy, and why not? Had they not escaped from troublemakers in their home countries? They saw ahead of them a stay free from trouble here in the Gambia, a country everyone kept calling the land of Kunta Kinte. All hoped to get from their stay as much rest as possible. Of course, at some point, they would each take the floor and, as fans back home expected, address the summit. But this was something that they could do with little or no effort at all. For Gambians, though, the presence of so many visiting dignitaries was not fun. True, 49 heads of state would give a hosting country good publicity. But heads of state are a huge inconvenience. So this publicity comes at a high price. Nowhere is the price higher than it is in Africa. Here, before dignitaries arrive, bulldozers dispatched at night in some clearance exercises demolish roadside kiosks on which whole families depend for their livelihoods. This way, the dignitaries will see that a few streets once had sidewalks. Roads get rare layers of tarmac at times of maximum traffic. This way, motorists come to a standstill when it really hurts. Checkpoints sprout everywhere. This way, guards get even more bases for extorting bribes from passers-by. When dignitaries arrive, water taps at which all neighborhoods queue to get just buckets of water dry up, because now all water has gone to new water fountains built to mesmerize the visitors. Catastrophes can happen even at summits. At Banjul Summit, preventing them from happening was a joint responsibility of the Ministry of Internal Security and the Ministry of Defense. This meant both the police and the army played major roles. They came up with a very effective way of assuring that all heads of state would be safe. It was this: all heads of state, including the host, would stay in one place, the Pinnacle Hotel, located in the outskirts of Banjul. What this did was reduce the 50 problems of assuring the safety of 50 guests scattered in 50 different locations to just one problem. That assuring the safety of 50 guests concentrated only one point. Security now became no more than the elementary task of ensuring that the Pinnacle became and remained an impenetrable fortress. This approach rested on two pillars: intelligence and combat. Intelligence meant secret agents melting into every hideout in Banjul. Their assignment was to investigate rumors about plans to storm the Pinnacle and harm new guests. That duty went to the police. Combat meant trained soldiers would engage in battle with any unauthorized person who did as much as come near the Pinnacle. This duty fell on the army. The army was very clever about it. First, it ringed the perimeter fence encircling the Pinnacle with 1,000 soldiers, then deployed 100 commandos in the compound inside the fence. Each of these soldiers and commandos outside the fence and in the compound within carried a real gun, so when the sky above may have remained open, the ground below was fully covered. This was very clever. There still remained Banjul's duty to extend to each head of state his or her due respect. This duty is commonly known as protocol. At the summit, it fell on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of International Cooperation. What these ministries did was to divide it into two separate parts. The first was how to sit the heads of state at the feast the Gambia was treating them to. at State House on the day they arrived. The second was to accommodate them at the Pinnacle Hotel, where they would stay between their arrival and their departure. No one who has played a host at a feast of more guests than just himself or herself needs to be told that the seemingly simple task of seating guests for a meal is in fact a complicated business. Should this guest sit here and eat next to that one? Or sit there and eat next to that one? The permutations and combinations that the host has to consider quickly become countless. For one guest, just one, there are already 4 options from which the host must choose. The guest could sit on the left or on the right of the host, or in front or even behind the host. For 5 guests, there are more than 700 such options. By the count of 10 guests, this number has jumped to over 30 million. The Gambia did not only have 10 guests, it had 49. In addition, they were not just guests, they were presidents. What happens when the guests are not just guests but presidents? Now, the host simply plays it safe. Eritrea and Ethiopia might seem one country. The host reasons, but their presidents rarely see eye to eye, so they should not be seated next to each other. On the other hand, the hosts continue to reason. Kenya and Tanzania agree more often than they disagree, so their presidents should sit next to each other and chat away in Kiswahili, and so on. This approach eliminates many options and in that way signifies choice. In fact, when the host is entertaining only 2 or 3 heads of state, it works wonders. However, if instead there are 49, it is practically worthless because it leaves millions of options from which the host must choose. Then, what do hosts do at state banquets, where guests definitely are many? They follow the United Nations, UN. Like the UN, they ignore all rumors about who is speaking or not speaking to whom, and simply sit everybody in alphabetical order, come what may. Alphabetical sitting has one huge advantage. It is easy because now there is only one way of sitting everybody. A happier world than that is hard to imagine. Still, it has one big problem. Sitting everybody in alphabetical order means Algeria and Angola always get the best seats, up in front, near the high table. When the sound system or the lights fail, these 2 countries can still follow the proceedings. Unfortunately, alphabetical sitting also means Zambia and Zimbabwe always gets the worst seat, way over there at the back, from where they cannot even see the high table. When the sound system fails or when the lights go out, big problem. What other option is there? Scramble the alphabet. Move Zambia and Zimbabwe near the high table and Algeria, Angola further from it. People would not be able to find their seats that way. The trick they use to find seats works sequentially. Malians scan the sea of seats before them in sequence until they spot a Malawian or a Mozambican. Then they say, Eureka! Our seats must be somewhere between those 2. Now scramble this approach. What happens? Chaos. Banquet halls cease to be navigable. So Zambia and Zimbabwe can complain all they want, but their seats just have to be at the back. Algeria and Angola, way to go. Hotel accommodations involved 2 questions. First, what floor should this head of state or that get? Second, how many rooms should his or her delegation have? The first question was easy. Heads of state got floors up or down the pinnacle in the alphabetical order of their country's official names. Once more, Algeria and Angola got top floors under A. Way to go. Botswana, Burkina Faso, and Burundi followed under B. Now, attention, the Ivory Coast did not come under I. It came under C, among the likes of Cameroon, the Comoros, the Congo, because its official name is Cote d'Ivoire. Djibouti and the rest came after C. For some unknown reason, the Federal Republic of Nigeria did not come under F. It came under N, alongside Namibia and Niger. Zambia and Zimbabwe, of course, came last. The second question was, how many rooms should a head of state delegation get? This question sounds easy, but it is not. Except for the United Nations General Assemblies, African summits are the world's largest gathering heads of state. Moreover, each head of state is accompanied by a delegation with members of unknowable number. So how many rooms should a delegation get? This is not easy. Gambians can be clever, and this is the case. They were. They assumed that all delegations, big or small, having arrived in Banjul safely, had to be equal. If only for that reason, very clever. This assumption enabled them to divide the number of rooms available equally among all delegations. The result was 4 rooms per delegation, and that was that. Case closed. End of chapter 1.